Hello and welcome to Buttercups Bulletin. I'm Paul Johnson and I'm joined today by Ellie Talbot, who's a pharmacist and pre-reg tutor here at Buttercups. Buttercups training have been around for about 30 years and during that time we've helped thousands of pre-regs achieve success and go on to be successful pharmacists. So we now find ourselves in a new pre-reg year, so we've all of a sudden got hundreds of new pre-regs that we need to train. So we thought it'd be quite useful to share with you some of our top tips for new pre-regs starting out in 2017. So first of all, have a formal meeting with your tutor. What's that about, Ellie?
Well, what we recommend is that in your first sort of few weeks, you have a chat to your tutor. You need to sit down and have a discussion with them about what their expectations are of you as a pre-reg, and in the same respect, what you should expect of them as a tutor.
Right.
And things that you need to discuss is things like your learning contract. That has a lot of useful information in there.
So the pre-regs should have seen the learning contract already?
Yes, it's to be found on your pre-registration manual, which is online with the GPHC website. And in there's information about your learning contract, what you should expect from your tutor, and there's information in there about the fact that your pre-registration year is about yourself taking responsibility for your learning for the next year. Yeah,
that's one thing really to stress at the beginning, that the pre-reg year is a self-guided year. The pre-reg is actually responsible for their own training, as a pharmacist would be as well, so it's kind of getting used to that idea. I know sometimes when we speak to pre-regs during the year who are having problems, perhaps issues with their tutor, that often the learning contract is one of the first things that we refer to, isn't it? So that's why it's important to know what's there. Anything else that ought to be covered during that formal meeting?
Well, the big one is study time.
Right.
So it's a good idea to get a bit of knowledge from the very beginning of the year as to how much study time you should be expected to have.
What's normal, would you say?
Well, to be honest, there isn't really a normality with it. It will differ from branch to branch, but we tend to recommend that trainees get around about an afternoon a week.
Right.
So approximately about 4 hours a week, something like that. But it will differ from branch to branch.
I guess you need to be quite flexible with that, though.
Yeah. It may not necessarily be an afternoon.
Right.
It could be that you just have an hour for 4 days a week. It could be that you don't have any one week and you have a full day the next week. It's something which you need to discuss with your tutor, and it's to do with what's best for both the business and for yourself.
Okay, so no hard and fast rules,
no.
But something to agree with your tutor.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next tip is create an action plan. Would you like to tell us a bit more about that one?
Yep, so you do need to get started from the very beginning. We do know that you have had a full 4 years at university, but you do need to get started from the very beginning with this. We recommend that you create an action plan first, have a look at your GPHC website, have a look at the pre-registration manual. In there's lots of information about performance standards. You want to have a go at having a look at them now, seeing which ones you can sign off first, because there's quite a few that you could maybe get signed off in the first few months. Yeah,
you tend to find when you look at the performance standards that there are some that you think, well, actually, I can sign this one off fairly quickly. One of them is something around having a good command of English, isn't it? So if English is your first language, then that should be one that hopefully should be fairly easy to demonstrate.
Take a few phone calls, speak to some patients.
For most people, and turn them into records of evidence, presumably.
Yes, always make sure that you turn them into records of evidence. So whether this is witness statements or whether or not it's a written dialogue that you make, but whatever you do, make sure that you have records of evidence for each one.
I have sometimes heard from pre-regs who say that their tutors don't want them to collect records of evidence. That's not how they're going to assess them. We have heard though this year that the GPHC, as the inspectors are going out to pharmacies, that they are actually asking to see the pre-reg portfolio of evidence. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that records of evidence aren't important. It's a really important way in which you're assessed as a potential pharmacist, and you can be asked to show that to the GPHC even during your pre-reg year.
Yeah, so it's really worth making records as you go along.
Great. Next one, OTC first.
Yep. So this is something that actually we get quite a few conversations about with trainees, and that's because they think that they need to be in that dispensary from the very get-go. But what we actually say is, actually OTC first. Don't be worried that you're not going to be in there for longer than a couple of months, and this is because this is the best time for you to get that interaction with customers. You can have those conversations. Don't worry about the fact that you're not in the dispensary at the very beginning.
Yeah. I guess quite a lot of pre-regs will have been in a situation where they've been perhaps working in pharmacies already, might even have done a counter assistance course. But I know certainly when I was a pre-reg, one of the things that I did was to identify the products that I was less familiar with that perhaps had come onto the market since I was last working into a pharmacy.
Yeah.
And you know, when you've got those quiet moments on the counter, have a look at the patient information leaflets. Familiarise yourself in that way as well.
Yeah.
What about other members of staff? What would you suggest there around
Don't
working with them?
forget your other members of staff, because although you do have your pharmacist who will be your pre-registration tutor, you also have a wealth of knowledge available to you. You may have someone that's worked in your branch for 20 odd years that knows your customers inside and out and knows a lot of information. So it is worth making sure that you do have conversations with them as well. Don't forget your assistants and don't forget your technicians.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea as well to observe people, how they interact with patients as well, and customers as they come into the pharmacy. You can learn a lot from people who have been there, as you say, often for 20, 30 years or more in some cases. So, excellent. Okay. So, next one. Carry a notebook. What's that one all about?
Yeah, make lots of notes as you go along. You will find that after a very, very long day in the dispensary or in the front of house, you will have forgotten quite a few of the things that you thought, oh, that'll be an interesting thing. So have yourself a little notebook. If you come across a drug that you don't understand, make a note of that drug. If you come across an interaction that you're not sure about, make a note of it. So that at the end of the day, once you've had your calm down, you can have a look at it, grab your BNF and do a little bit more research into it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice actually, because pharmacies are really busy places, aren't they? So obviously when you're there and you've got to obviously serve your patients, your customers, and you've got a job to do, sometimes you can't simply get the time to go look something up in the BNF. So just make a quick note of it. Follow it up later on rather than forget about it and then think, what did I actually do today? So yeah, good advice. Excellent. Our last tip for today, subscribe to mailing lists. What's that all about?
So a lot of companies give out mailing lists. So if you subscribe to them, it means that you'll be getting an email as soon as there's a change in information. So it's really worth making sure that you subscribe, because it means that you'll be at the forefront of any information changes that happen throughout your pre-registration year.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of the ones that we've got on screen at the moment, the MHRA, NICE, Public Health England. If you think about it, the GPHC are probably writing their questions very soon for the exams for next year. So some of the things which are in the news now could well be this kind of things that you need to be aware of for the exam, which may seem like a long way away, but will soon come around and it'll be with you before you realise it. So a lot of these you can subscribe to the mailing lists and just get the updates before anybody else. So good advice. Excellent. Anything else to add, Ellie?
It's probably worth knowing as well that there's a few applications that you could download that might be quite useful for you, so have a look at them. There's things such as the BNF applications which have been released recently. The GPHC have a standards one you may wish to download, and that just means that you have access to this information at your fingertips in your phone, so it's a quick and easy way to access that information. So it's worth having a look at those as well.
Brilliant. Okay. So the idea of Buttercups bulletins, the new bulletins that we're going to be doing for pre-regis, is that we want to share our advice, our experience, our tips throughout the year on a fairly regular basis, but also to speak to some of the people in the pharmacy world that you might be interested to hear from as well. So make sure that you keep looking out for these Buttercups bulletins. You can keep in contact with what we're doing here at Buttercups via Twitter and also by Facebook. Leave us a comment. And if you've got a suggestion of something that you'd like to cover or like to see covered during the bulletins, then please do let us know. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thanks.